Mr. Vikrant Kishore is a filmmaker, turned media educator and researcher. He has worked for law in Delhi University, IP College for Women, and he started his career as a journalist, was working with Z in the initial years, and for the last, for a long time, he has been in Australia, working in different universities. Right now, he is heading the Media and Mass Communication Department in Deakin University, Melbourne, Australia. So incidentally, he was here, so he accepted our request to be here and address you all. So he can give you a complete scenario, the way the media is changing all over the world, right from India to Australia, the kind of opportunities which are there, and he can also suggest ways how can you make use of those opportunities. So Mr. David Das is here. He is working for law, heading the Delhi office of Deakin University. So he can also be instrumental in so many things to your benefit. So I will request Dr. Vikrant Kishore to please come over at this
It will be very good to have a kind of an interactive session, and if you have any questions related to media, films, online media landscape, things like that, I'm more than happy to speak about it. So shall we try and start with some kind of a Q&A format, and then we'll see how to go about it?
Yes.
Yes? Alright, so I think I've got some agreement there. So if anybody wants to shoot a question, and then probably I would focus on that and go ahead with that. No questions? Yes?
So, for example, if we start a YouTube channel, so how we should promote it in a proper way that it goes viral or it goes in a better way?
Alright. What's your name, sorry?
This is Samiksha, finally.
Samiksha. Okay, this is what I've been talking since morning, or rather for last few days, is viral or how to use social media. So one of the things, what is happening is that 20 years back when we started as, I started as a filmmaker, even more than 20 years probably, yeah, roughly 21 years I would say. So when we started, we were in that kind of a situation that we did films in traditional format as well as traditional film format, proper, which was shot on films, and digital, not digital, but beta videos, okay. And then when we came out to the market, suddenly we realized that we are in that cusp of market where things were changing into digital media. And while I learned actual editing, so for us, cut and paste was actually cutting a reel and pasting the reel together, okay, film reels. So that was cut and paste for us. It wasn't about, control V or control B or control C, that kind of thing. So it happened a little later, but it was quite interesting to grow with that kind of scene. But still, only probably I'll look back, probably in last 5 years, suddenly, as a traditional filmmaker, I was never, or we never used to think about marketing our things, okay? It was all about making a film, and then probably either waiting for a commissioned project to come along or some financier to come along. Okay? That was yesterday. That is now a gone story. For people like you, for students now, or for a professional like me now, it is very important for us to understand how this social media landscape works, and how just being a filmmaker or just being a content creator isn't going to work for you, okay? If you are going to approach, or any client approaches you today, if they want to get you to make a corporate film, or even a feature film, or even whatever kind of media they want to get you to make, first question they are going to ask you is that, how are you going to promote my film, or what is the kind of reach are you going to show me, or do you have a social media profile? Can I see how much reach your project has got? Okay? And even in interviews, people ask you for your social media, understanding, and then wanting to see, have you shared some video? People ask about, if you have on your profile or on your biodata something like your YouTube channel, people do look at it. People also look at your Facebook profile. Lots of screening is done on the basis of Facebook profile. What kind of things are you posting? What kind of personality you are? Okay? A whole lot of companies are checking in terms of personalities. But if you are really targeting media industry, then they are more interested in also looking at what kind of videos or what kind of stories you are telling. But going viral is a different game, okay? And that's a different understanding that no, not everyone can go viral. Not everything can have a kind of a footprint everywhere. So most importantly, you need to understand that are you going to get a somewhat, I would rather say, decent viewership, and what is a good viewership, all right? So you need to understand, I hope you are understanding what I'm talking about here.
Yes, sir.
You all are active online media user,
Yes, sir.
Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, that's what I'm talking about. So that's where the media is moving towards. So earlier, traditionally, we were talking about making media, like when I had to do a media project. Is there a projector here?
Yes, sir.
See? No. So no projector, so I can't show you anything at the moment. So, is there a projector?
Yes, sir.
Oh yeah. Can someone help me turn that on? Is there a technical person around? Okay, we'll fix that later. Anyway, so what I was trying to say is that the online media is becoming, like you are making content for online media as well. So you have specialist areas like you are going into fiction film, or you are going in to make documentaries and all. But as a student, you should start telling stories online. Okay? The more the stories you tell, the more your profile builds up. Okay? And whole lot of content management jobs are coming up, or content creation jobs are coming up in the online field. People are looking for specialists who can make programs or projects for online media. Recently, I was asked to do a 6-part, help a university to do a kind of a video lecture series, okay? And they wanted it for their students, and I did that. And it was very new for me to do video online lecture so that students can just log in anytime and can watch my lecture. And I realized it is a much more tougher thing to actually record a lecture and then put it online. It actually requires at least 3 to 4 days work to prepare a lecture. For me to give a lecture like right now, I'm not prepared. I'm just coming and delivering a lecture. I've been in this job for 20 years probably. So for me, it's not a difficult job. I can come and talk. But when it's about talking about specifically about pointers and things like that, and creating a video and to tell a story within that video, okay? So it's not about just delivering lecture. It is also about telling a story. So there's a whole lot of things involved. I was doing a kind of a I was doing a web series recently for a TV channel in Australia. They wanted for the Hindi speaking audience, for Australian Indians, they wanted a web series to be done, and they wanted an online engagement about exploring the aspect of being Australian Indians, okay? And they wanted me to do it in Hindi and reach out to the Indians. So in Melbourne and Sydney, there are almost around 3,000 Indians, 300,000 Indians, okay? So almost 3 lakhs, I would say. And so when I spoke to the SBS, which is one of the top channels of Australia, the executive producer asked me that, Vikrant, listen, we understand you do documentaries, but we want you to do a web series. And we want the stories to be only between 3 to 4 minutes long, okay? And I've never done like short stories. Like short stories I used to do when I used to work with Z News back in India. I was a correspondent with them. So back in 99 to 2001, I was working with Z News. So we used to do those package stories. So I had an idea of doing those, but actually doing kind of a short profile and interviewing someone and then making a 3 to 4 minute story which makes an impact, it was very challenging for me. Okay. And then they wanted to see, they said, okay, we'll give you, 3 episodes to start with, and we'll see if it works or not. And let's try and get at least 3,000 views for the story. Okay. Understanding, okay, 300,000 people, maybe someone will watch or not, but not all active on Facebook. So 3,000 was my target, that I should gather at least 3,000 views and some comments and shares. Alright? So the first story, when I went to do, so first my thing was that I have to look for Australian Indians who have some interesting story. So it was not about finding just someone who can talk in front of camera, but they have to have a story. And you have to understand that when you are telling a story, it needs to have a story arc, okay? It needs to have a beginning, it needs to have a body, okay? That there are some important things happening, okay? Or there are some issues that you are going to show, and then a certain conclusion, okay? So it starts with a question, or starts with something confrontational, or it starts with something which they thought about, that this would happen. And then how that things unfold, so you try and cover that aspect as your body of the story, and then you start with a conclusion. And when the first person I interviewed, and this was for, again, I'm reiterating, we are doing an online story. The brief was to do a 3 to 4 minute story. And I ended up, my first interview, how long it was? The interview ended up being a 2 hours interview, okay? And that guy went on to tell me the whole life story of his. And then the next challenge was, as a traditional filmmaker who was always making films, short films in 20 minutes, or my shortest film was probably of 15 minutes, okay? And for me, it was a struggle to make a film in 3.5 minutes. When I say film, a short story, okay? So how would I do that? So my first edit, when I edited the first story, after lots of struggle, I ended up making a 10-minute story, okay? After 2 hours of interview, I did a 10-minute story, and I told my wife, listen, now this story looks perfect, I can't edit it anymore, I can't do it. And then she said, your brief is to do 3 to 4 minutes, you can't do that, it's quite long, it won't work online. And online, anything which is more than 5 minutes, nobody watches it, okay? Unless it's someone who's putting up a pirated, film online, then there might be few people. But people also, even the piracy thing has gone down now because of Netflix and others, Stan and all. How drastically it has reduced piracy, that's another topic to talk about. So the second go I had on the editing, it was, the story became 5 minutes. And I was like, I can't edit it any further, I'm going to kill the soul of the story. I found the story to be motivating enough, and I thought it's very strong story. And any more I cut it, I won't be doing justice. So I sent it back to my executive producer saying that, listen, this is my final version, kindly accept it, and this is how I'm going to do a 5-minute story for you. And my executive producer said, okay Vikrant, I'm going to talk to the director and then come back to you. And then after a few hours, she calls me up and says, Vikrant, we are trying to experiment with something, and we are seeing online 2-minute stories and 3-minute stories doing wonderfully well. And we have asked you already to do a 3 to 4 minute story, why can't you do that? And then I said, okay, let me try. And again I sat down, edited it ruthlessly, I just closed my eyes in a way, and I just said, okay, chop, 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 let me just take it out, something. So if he was breathing for 1 second before talking, I would cut that breathing out. I would cut ums, any kind of thinking. So suddenly I realized I've taken out 15, 20 seconds in that way. So from 5 minutes, suddenly it was 3 minutes, 26 seconds. And I was so happy that I could chop a story in 3.5 minutes. And I was like, but will that make sense? But then for us, it was all about going online. So when the story went online, like I put a small promotional, a teaser video online, and my target was 3,000. So that small teaser, within 24 hours, we got around 7,000 views. So my target was achieved. But it ended up getting around 120,000 views. So in Australian Indian community, it went viral. So That was better part. No, reserve the clapping after you see that thing. If you like it only, then clap, okay? No false ones.
प्लेन में बैठे तो यही सोचा था कि जाएंगे तो एयरपोर्ट पे गोलियां चारों तरफ झूम जाएगी। सिटी में जाएंगे, एक आलीशान सा कमरा होगा, ग्लास मिरर से यारा रिवर का व्यू, ग्राउंड का व्यू दिखेगा। नीचे ड्राइववे में एक अच्छी सी कार होगी और बस उसको लेके ड्राइव पे निकल जाएंगे।
So what is happening is that the media is being accessible to everyone. One of the problems for last 5-10 years, everybody was really worried as that people are not able to make money because piracy was rampant. There was so much of piracy is that because everybody was able to download it through torrents and this and that. And one of the major problem of why people were downloading, because mostly by the time you decide to watch a film, the film would go out of the theater. It wouldn't survive that long. Secondly, someone would put a bootlegged, pirated copy online. Okay. So when Netflix, Stan, and other online players decided to change their tariff policy, the structure, suddenly for $10 for a month you have access to thousands of films, or for 999 rupees you have access to thousands of films. You are not going to log on, you are not going to wake up the whole night and be on torrent sites to download films, because you are getting easy access to that at a very nominal fee. And it has changed that whole structure drastically. Okay, piracy has gone down so immensely that people are no more bothered about it. And also the countries have become very strict about torrents and all. Like in Australia, they have banned all the torrent sites. So if you try to log on to a torrent site, unless you are using a proxy, then you can access it. But if you're not using a proxy, then they are also trying to put a fine on people using proxies or using torrents like that. So they are trying to dissuade people from downloading that. Of course, there are different ways people can do it. But it has really almost, the way piracy has come down, especially in the Western countries, it has come down to almost 80%. Because everybody has access to Netflix and all. And what Netflix has done is that, the other day I was about 3 years back, and Netflix was just, in its, like people were just getting to know about Netflix. And one of my juniors from Jamia, MCRC, she had made a very interesting documentary, and I was doing a film festival in Newcastle, near Sydney. And I wanted a documentary, and she sent me a documentary. It's called The Rat Race. If you get time, and if you have Netflix, then search for The Rat Race. It is a film by Miriam Menacheri. She's a good friend of mine and plus a junior from. So it is a documentary. So I got that documentary for my film festival, and people liked it. It is all about the rat catchers in Mumbai trains and Mumbai platforms and all those. So yeah, it was quite interesting. I showed it in my festival, and then later on she, updated on Facebook that it is on Netflix, and then later on she told me she got some good amount. The more you try to hard sell yourself and trying to portray yourself as something really big, those really fall flat, because you have to have something strong. So your portfolio should do the talking. Okay. So probably I'll leave it to you. I'll leave it here, okay, because we still have lots of things to do. Thanks a lot for watching my film and listening to me, and I wish you all the best, and thank you.